Hello and welcome back to another episode of Jaycraft. In this episode we'll be going through combat, basically how to get around safely, and as well as going over some ideas for traps that you can do to make safer areas and, I don't know, just things you can mess around with. Let's get into it. Alright, first things first. This is my basic setup for the combat side of things. When I'm working with iron, I like to have a couple swords just because if one will break. The usual tools, some wood, just so if you need to replenish any of these, especially if you're down in a cave. And then food, obviously to heal yourself, keep your food bar up so you can keep healing. And torches, make safe areas, and then some cobblestone blocks. And the reason I like to have blocks is if you get stuck fighting more than you can handle, that's unexpected, but great. Then you can place some blocks and get away, climb tower up, or make a wall. So in this example, basically what we'll do is, if he lets us, we've towered up, and now we are safe from this guy. He can't do much. He can come over and shoot us, but then what we can do is put some walls up, and now we're safe. Obviously not completely safe, but basically you can use it to get away in situations. And so what we'll do here is, the best part about having a shield is you hold right click and it'll block arrows. What you can actually do is if you get close enough to him, you can block an arrow and actually it'll bounce back into him. Maybe we'll go above him here. Well, it does work. Doesn't want to happen right now. But that's one of the nice things about shields is some of these guys can be pretty accurate with their shots. So once you get a shield, it really sort of lets you just, get away and not have to worry about it. Whereas, right now, if I wasn't, if I had one heart left, I'd be trying to zigzag and get away. Whereas I can just sit here and take shots from him, all day. And so we'll go over the sword next. Basically, you left click to swing it. You have this little sword on the screen. And every time, right under the reticle, you'll do full damage when that bar is filled up. So the thing with, since the update is, if you just spam it, you're going to do very low damage. But if you wait, you're going to do more hearts, basically. Now, another thing to note is when you're fighting somebody, if you fall while you swing and hit, you'll get these little, I don't know what to call them, sparkles almost, or you get a little effect basically, and that just means that you got a crit on them. So if you do it while falling, you do basically more damage. So it's those sparkles that show up there. So those are all crit hits versus a regular hit, which is just like this, no sparkles. So it's best if if you can, with every hit, do a jump before it and hit on the falling action, basically. So that's sword and shield. Now what we'll do is we'll run back inside and see if we have any arrows. I didn't expect to get a crossbow or for those guys to show up. But since we have, we now have a good example for that. Alright. Now one thing to note is if you ever come across those guys, they can show up randomly. Basically they're pillagers and they have their crossbows and they're very slow to shoot because with the crossbow you have to hold to right... Oops, no, it was loaded. Alright, so you hold right click and it'll draw the... basically it'll load the crossbow, and then we'll use this sheep as an example. and then you just right click to fire it. So it's a little bit of a slower weapon, which is why it's sort of easier to deal with those guys. But they'll just appear just randomly, basically. And what happens is if you kill the guy with the flag, you'll get this bad omen effect. And what that means is if you show up to a village where there's villagers, which we've yet to go to, but we'll probably do that in one of the next couple episodes. What'll happen is a raid will start. More of those guys will spawn in, and they'll basically try to kill all the villagers. And so your goal essentially is to save the village and become the hero of the village. And we'll go through that in another episode. But basically, occasionally they'll show up, and if you don't want to get this effect, just don't kill the guy, wielding the flag, basically. What you can do is take a bucket, fill it with lava, and then kill him with the lava. Because you haven't killed him and the lava's killed him, that'll save yourself the effect. But one thing we can also do, if you do kill him with the sword and you want to go to your village, is if you take a bucket and go over to your cows, you can get a milk bucket. And with that, if you drink it, clears any of the effects that you have. So it's not a bad idea to have a milk bucket on hand, because basically you can just get rid of any negative effects that anything might give you. There's another enemy, the witch, which I don't know if we'll come across in this episode, but basically they'll throw potions at you, and if you have a milk bucket, you can get rid of that. Any of those negative effects that they throw on you. So what we'll do is we'll head into the cave and we'll go through a couple fighting strategies against some of the monsters. Alright, so we're back in the cave from the mining expedition the other day. As you can see, there's still some ores lying around. We didn't get everything out of it. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through here, find some monsters. The main mobs that you'll come across are skeletons like this one here. What you do is basically you just hold the shield up, and between every shot, hit them once. That way you don't get hit, and you don't have to use as much food, basically. You've got skeletons, you've got zombies, you've got creepers, and spiders. Those are the most common. There's a creeper right there. With creepers, what you want to do, because they'll explode, is you want to hit them and then back up. Hit them and then back up. And what you can do, and we'll try to show a better example, is with any mob, really, what you want to do is hit it. He's not going to go anywhere. You hit them back, and you back up. That way, there's no chance of them hitting you. So, run towards them, hit them, back up. Run towards them, hit them, back up. And you couldn't do anything. And the nice thing about a shield, too, is it'll absorb a creeper blast. So if you get caught off guard and one of those explodes behind you, they could kill you in one hit, depending on the difficulty you're on. But if you can just turn around real quickly with a shield and block it, then you've just saved your life. So that's why having a shield with you is very important. So here's another example of why I said you should have some blocks on you. Is what you can do, like I said, is start walling up and protecting yourself. So this is good if you're in an emergency and you're sort of backed into a corner. Maybe you come across too many of them. What you can do is you find a wall, back in, and then do this, and then you're basically safe. And what you can do as well is tunnel down and then do this and kill them without them being able to hit you as easily. And then one thing that you can also use to your benefit as well, these skeletons can hit other mobs. So like that, now they're starting to fight each other because they've hit each other, and then now it's not your problem anymore. And another thing you can do is use the environment around you, and you can just knock them right off. And, you know, give them some fall damage as well. So one thing when you're fighting, if you double tap W or whatever control you have run on, so I think control does it as well, yeah. Depending on what you have it set for, basically. If you run at something and then hit it, you will knock it back. So that's the best thing when working with, you know, fighting creepers, or anything where you need to give yourself some space. Just run at them, hit them, and then back off. Just backing up after every hit. Putting yourself in water is probably one of the worst things you can do, because you move a lot slower. So usually, instead of moving along the shore, I back off to get away from things if you need to get away from them. That being said, if you put them into water, suddenly that creeper's moving real slow. And as well, if a creeper is in water and they explode, they won't break blocks around it. Whereas if they're on the shore here, all the blocks around it will break up. Now, one thing you can do to add to your, you know, fighting and defense, you know, collection of things you can do is pick up some lava in a bucket, and you can actually burn things with them. And that can be useful because it sort of immobilizes them almost. It sort of slows them down like if they were in water. And that way, you know, you can sort of take care of multiple enemies at once. So now I can go to a safe spot and then pick it back up. And then another thing, you know, if you don't need to fight everything. If you need to get somewhere and it's night and you haven't slept, just run. As long as you have food on you and you keep your food bar above 4 at the bottom, you have running ability and you can just run away from your enemies. You don't have to, you know, fight everything you come across. Now, one thing to note is when day comes around, some of the mobs will just start, you know, if they're out not in shade, they'll just catch on fire and they'll start dying. So that's why day's pretty safe. One thing to keep in mind is this will not happen with creepers. Creepers will stick around, and they are coincidentally one of the more dangerous ones. So you got to be careful with that. Alright, and so we found ourselves an Enderman. The main thing, and I probably should have said it in the first video, honestly, do not look them in the eyes unless you want to fight them. And even if you do want to fight them, the smartest way to fight one, and this once again is why you want to have blocks with you, is to cage them in, basically. Because if you cage them in, they can't move. And that gives you a great bonus. Always being careful not to look at their eyes. If you look them in the eyes, they'll start attacking you. And they'll attack you really quickly. They start running. You don't want to mess with them. So what you do is you can put them here and then just hit their legs. And if you hit their legs, they won't teleport. Because that's the worst part about them, is they'll start to teleport. But if you hit them in the legs, then all you have to do, like any of the other mobs, just keep swinging, waiting for your sword bar to, you know, refill, and you'll be able to kill them and you won't have to worry about it. As long as you hit them in the legs. And what we'll do is we'll set him free, and we'll show you an example of what happens if you look him in the eyes and he starts attacking you. And another, like I said, another good reason to have a shield, because if worst comes to worst and it starts attacking you, put up your shield and you'll survive a lot longer. So we've looked at him in the eyes. He comes running at you. Put your shield up. If you're scared, just put your shield up. And then what you do... Oh, my shield broke. Basically, just be calm. And just keep hitting them. And you will kill them. As you can see by the hearts we have left, like I said, you don't really want to mess with them early on. Because they're a tough enemy. And that's why it's good to keep an eye on your shield, because my shield broke and I almost died. So keep tabs on that, because you don't wanna have to deal with that. And knowing, you know, how many hits it takes to kill stuff can help, because like you saw with that creeper, you know, you can just shred one really quickly. As long as you time your hits right and get the full damage, get a crit off on one of the attacks. The only other thing I want to go through is that with it, your axes, they actually do more damage than your swords. So an iron sword does 6 attack damage, your iron axe does 9. But the speed in which that dagger on the center of the screen refills is a lot slower with an axe. So going back to max damage takes a little bit longer. So my understanding is if you're doing actual player versus player combat, an axe is better because it just does outright more damage. But you know, with killing mobs, it's really a preference thing. I like the sword just because it refills faster and you can get a full attack in faster than with the other ones. The only other thing I wanted to go through in this episode was traps. You can make certain traps to help keep your place safe. And one thing you can do is if you use these trap doors, which we went through previously, what'll happen is if you have an enemy chasing you, they don't realize that this isn't a full block. They think it is a full block, and so they'll actually fall down into the pit. So let me go get a monster and I'll show you an example. So they normally won't fall in there. They will want to walk around. They don't want to go somewhere where they'll get stuck, because then they won't be able to path to where I am. But like I said, what you do is you just throw some of those trap doors down. They're just willing to walk into the pit all of a sudden, so you can do this to keep your place safe. What we might do is put some around our trench to keep us safe. What you can do is put lava at the bottom of this so that they fall into lava and they die. You can use a couple blocks that'll actually damage both you or them, so you just have to be careful. If you do put something in like a trench or around your place like we have set up over here, the main thing is to remember that if you fall in, you have to be able to get out. You have a little more options because you can use blocks to build out, and they can't. But you could fill it with lava. You could put berry bushes, which we haven't found yet. You could put the magma blocks, which we haven't found yet, but I'm sure if we went swimming out in that water, we'd find some. Anything like that. And that way they would just fall right in, because they wouldn't see it as a hole, and then basically keep your place safe. And you can, like I said, you can use it also to just capture monsters if you're looking to, I don't know, put one in your place or something. There's a couple different options, but yeah, that's one additional thing trap doors are good for, other than just decorating your place. All right, this has been the episode on basically combat and traps and what you can do with them, and basically how to survive in the wild. Basically, it'll just help you out when you're going and mining in caves. And making sure your volume up is as well, just so that you can hear the monsters around you, is very important. Hopefully some of those tips and tricks helped you out. In a future episode, when we get access to making potions, we'll go over potions and stuff, because that can also be integrated into combat to help you out. Currently, we don't have access to them, so we're not going to. But once we eventually get to that point, we'll add that in. Hopefully, like I said, you enjoyed the video. Hopefully it's been useful to you. And please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.